Good morning. Thank you for watching 12 Investigative Podcast. I'm going to show you the cameras en route that could have captured the Elantra with the reading of Coco Peru. She is going to discuss GPS and location.
Reflecting back on my podcast covering the Bryan Kohberger case, many things still stand out to me. Your Honor, my client is innocent. Much of the public certainty surrounding this case appears to stem from interpretations of discovery material, not necessarily evidence that was ever formally contextualized, challenged, or admitted at trial. For years now, the public conversation surrounding the Kohberger case has revolved around one phrase repeated over and over again. His phone stopped reporting to the cellular network. Cellular network. And that distinction matters more than most people realize. Because despite years of media debate and endless discussion surrounding tower pings, one thing remains conspicuously absent from the public record. Data. Not once in the probable cause affidavit did investigators state that Bryan Kohberger's GPS stopped reporting. The PCA stated only that his phone stopped utilizing or reporting to the cellular network during the relevant time frame. That may sound like a minor distinction. It isn't, and years later, another uncomfortable reality has become increasingly clear. The public has never seen the raw data. To be clear, I am not arguing that the evidence does not exist, nor am I claiming either side lacks compelling information. What I am saying is much narrower. A tremendous amount of public certainty has been built around evidence the public itself has never actually examined. Maybe that secrecy exists to protect investigative techniques. Maybe it exists to preserve the capabilities of modern forensic technology. Maybe it is simply standard legal procedure. Whatever the reason, one fact remains true. Without a trial, investigative methods are rarely dissected in public. And whether that lack of transparency is appropriate is an entirely separate debate, because this cuts both ways. Raw data can help a defendant, raw data can hurt a defendant, but until evidence is authenticated, contextualized, and challenged inside a courtroom, interpretation fills the vacuum. And that brings us to one of the most important distinctions in this entire case. Discovery material, raw evidence exchanged during litigation, is not the same thing as proven evidence presented and tested in court. Those are two very different things. So I want to ask a very simple question. Do you know as a fact that Bryan Kohberger manually turned his phone off? Because despite years of public conjecture surrounding this case, the answer is far more complicated than most people realize. The PCA states only that the phone stopped reporting to the cellular network during the relevant time frame, and this is where the public often overestimates forensic certainty. Phones can generate shutdown or power state artifacts through manual power-offs, crashes, forced resets, reboots, battery events, software instability, updates, or ambiguities in forensic interpretation itself. Without a trial, evidence like this is unlikely to ever be fully contextualized publicly. This is not a statement about Bryan Kohberger's guilt or innocence. It is a statement about certainty. Cell tower records and GPS are not the same system. The publicly released documents discussed cellular network usage and tower connections, but they did not publicly confirm whether GPS or location service data continued during the network gap. Again, that may sound like a small distinction. It isn't, especially in a world where smartphones are capable of recording extraordinarily precise information regarding movement, elevation, velocity, direction, and location history. And there are two critically important categories of evidence the public still has not meaningfully seen discussed in detail: behavioral patterns and GPS data. So where is that data? Because Bryan Kohberger's alibi affidavit was submitted after digital evidence had already been collected, behavioral analysis had likely already occurred, and both sides had access to far more information than the public ever saw. And despite all of that, Ann Taylor still repeatedly stated, "Your Honor, my client is innocent." Meanwhile, the defense's alibi affidavit stated, "Mr. Kohberger has long had a habit of going for drives alone. He often did so at night. He would drive throughout the area south." of Pullman, Washington, west of Moscow, Idaho, including Wawawai Park. Mr. Kohberger was out driving during the late night and early morning hours of November 12th and November 13th, 2022. He was doing so alone, as he often did to hike and run and/or see the moon and stars. Publicly, many people mocked this statement, but one thing seems certain. The prosecution was unlikely to casually dismiss an alibi attached to a case built so heavily around digital evidence. Not because digital evidence would necessarily prove innocence, but because it could strengthen the plausibility of the alibi itself. We may never know. Maybe I'm reaching. That's not for me to decide. I'm simply bringing you the story.
Yes, inside looking. And we're also going to focus on BK's questionnaire that he posted on Reddit. And we're going to explore some of the questions. We're going to talk about it. I hope everybody's having a great week, and I hope that you enjoy this, because this is strictly my opinion, and everything that I talk about here is alleged. So let's get on with it, shall we? Okay, if y'all remember early on in the case, this screen name, Inside Looking, was on the Reddit post. This one was 16 days, I guess, after the murders, so let's go ahead and read it. It says, speculation. Killer parked behind the house. Approached property through the tree line. He entered the sliding door and left it open. Committed the murders and exited the sliding door. One knife, according to coroner's statement. Time of the murder was approximately 3:20 a.m. to 3:40 a.m. According to the car fleeing the scene and on camera on Highway 8 approximately at 3:45. Vehicle left skid marks upon exit. Please see photos below for more information. And somebody commented, dude is solving his own crime. Psycho. So, let's talk about this a little bit. It's a very detailed, very descriptive outline of the murder. And it's also been said or speculated that Brian was using this screen name to communicate with people on the internet. I know another name, the Papa Roger one, was discounted as not being true. But this one I never heard was discounted as not being true. So whenever they confiscated his computer, all the information from his social media accounts, I'm sure they'll be able to tell if he actually was communicating with people with this screen name. How ironic would it be that Brian would be communicating online, presenting facts that nobody knew at that time? How would anybody know these things? Even though he starts out, or she, whoever wrote this, even though they start out speculation. Killer parked behind the house. Approached the property through the tree lines. Well, we've discussed that. It was documented that he entered the sliding door, and the bushy eyebrow dude exited through the sliding door. The knife, I don't remember hearing that from the coroner about one knife. The time of the murder, when this first started off, They said it was between 3 and 4. They were saying that everywhere. The only reason that they changed that is based on Dylan and Bethany's downloads of their cell phone. The car fleeing the scene on camera on Highway 8 at 3:45. Supposedly that's that car that was caught on the Exxon cam. The vehicle did leave skid marks upon the exit. That has been known. I don't know about the photos below. For more information, I don't know what kind of photos were left. So let me know what you think about this speculation. Would it be just somebody randomly guessing the time frame? Would it be somebody speculating what exactly happened, how it happened, when it happened? Let me know in the comments what you think. And if you enjoy what I'm doing, please hit the like button and subscribe if you aren't already a subscriber. You know, when it comes to this speculation, it's very descriptive. I don't know how many people would put this information together if they weren't privileged to the information that was being stated. And this is privileged information. Let me know what you think. Do you believe that it could possibly be somebody that was with him if he wasn't alone? Do you believe it was him that was actually doing the communicating through the online forum? Let me know what you think. Okay, here's some of the questions that were on that questionnaire when he was at DeSales University that he posted on Reddit. So here's one example that shows that Mr. Kohberger did use the Reddit to post these questions. Let's go ahead and read number 1. It says, what was the first move you made in order to accomplish your goal? Please detail any thoughts and feelings at this point. I know that these have been discussed and they've been gone over, but is there something in these questions that could tie him into the potential crime? What was the first move you made in order to accomplish your goal? Well, according to that speculation, he walked through the tree lines parked in the back, went through the slider, left it open, went right back out the slider. But the first move would have been what? Even before all that, if he were diagramming his own crime, it would have been stalking, either online or allegedly those 12 other times, the cast information from his phone. That would have been the first move that any killer would have made in order to accomplish their goal. Find out when and how the roommates' daily routines were. Take a look and see what these girls and the guy was doing during these times. Number 2 says, did you prepare for the crime before leaving your home? Please detail what you were thinking and feeling at this point. Now, if we're looking at Brian, did he prepare for the crime before leaving his home? Let's think about this a little bit. Did he have all this stuff already in his car, in the trunk, ready for any time that the opportunity arose? Or did he load up his car with all this stuff that he needed on the night that he allegedly committed the crime? Preparing for the crime before leaving your home. Well, he had to have. What were you thinking and feeling at this point? Well, common sense tells us that he was probably feeling anxious, and he was thinking, I hope I get away with this, and I hope there aren't anybody else in that home on this night to interrupt what I want to do, what I'm going to do. Because think about it, if he was stalking them on social media, I don't remember, I didn't go through their social media accounts. I didn't go through the Instagram, the TikToks, any of that stuff. But I remember seeing other creators talk about it. Was there statuses that told, okay, could there have been a status that said, hey, we just got back from the football game, gonna take a nap, blank. Okay, we just got up, we're heading to the corner club, blank. Okay, we're leaving the corner club, we're heading to the grub truck, blank. Okay, just got a ride share back to the house, blank. So if he was watching the social media, were these statuses or pictures being put on their social medias for him to stalk them, to know when to get ready, to feel the excitement rising in him that he was about to commit a murder, and thinking exactly who he was going to commit that murder on? On to the next question. Before leaving, is there anything else that you did? Before leaving his house, is there anything else that he did? I'm pretty certain that if he did the crime, he didn't sit and pray about it. He didn't sit and try to talk himself out of it. He might have, but I doubt it. What do you think he did before leaving his house? Y'all help me out here, okay? Write your answers in the comments. Before leaving his house, is there anything else that he did? I would say chances are he shaved his body from head to toe, other than the bushy eyebrows, which he might have been better off to shave those bad boys off. Then you couldn't have really known who it was. What else could he have done? Gone over in his mind the plan one last time? What am I going to do? How am I going to do this? It's go time. There's no backing out no matter what. Who's first? Who's second? Who's third? Who's fourth? And what happens if this happens? What happens if this person shows up? What happens if these people show up? What happens if during the crime, partiers start showing up? People that usually frequent the house start showing up? That's one thing that's never been discussed that I just thought about. If you're preparing for this, it's pretty brazen to think that you're going to be in there during a time when nobody's going to show up to come party. Because supposedly people were in and out of that house all the time. It was unregulated. It was any time of the night. But during this specific time frame, nobody showed up. Is that because they knew it was going to happen? Did people know that this was going to occur? Or did they just not feel like partying that night? Nobody throughout that time frame went to that house, allegedly. Nobody tried to call Ethan, tried to text Anna, tried to text Maddie or call Maddie throughout the middle of the night. No one that we know of. But how realistic does that sound? Use your thinking caps, guys. If this house was supposedly as much of a party house as they say, how did no one come in while he was doing that? Or had he already left and somebody may have came in and said, hey, it's okay, I'm here to help you. They got scared and they left. Is this the informant? Is this the person that bumped into Brian on the way out? Is this the person that bumped into him on the way in? Who knows? Because supposedly there was an informant that helped them catch Mr. Kohberger. Allegedly. Let's move on to the next question. It says, after committing the crime, what were you thinking and feeling? This is after the crime. He asked what you would be thinking and feeling before the crime. This is after. So let's think a little bit what Mr. Kohberger or whoever did this, were you thinking and feeling? Thinking? I would be going on a limb to say he was probably thinking, oh shit, what did I do? Or, oh shit, I got away with it. Feeling? He was probably feeling elated, energized, a feeling of success. Because after all, he went in to do something and he accomplished it. Even if it wasn't something rewarding that most people are happy about, if he did it and succeeded without getting caught or having anybody identify him as he felt, and he didn't leave any DNA as he thought, then he would be feeling elated, full of adrenaline, his heart pumping 1,000,000 miles an hour, driving off on his way to wherever he was going to go. Very scattered, not a lot of real thoughts going on. Before making your move, how did you approach the victim or target? Please detail what you were thinking and feeling. See, this questionnaire is very emotionally driven, okay? Because that wording, thinking and feeling. So you think something, you feel it. You have a feeling attached to it. That is the thought process cycle. So before making your move, how did you approach the victim or the target? This is asking, before you're about to do what you did, how are you thinking and feeling? This sounds like a bunch of emotional attachment to it. Maybe that's why the crimes were so brutal. Because whoever did it did have an emotional attachment to it. They were thinking, I can't believe I'm doing this. They were feeling elated that it was going down. After arriving, what step did you take prior to locating the victim or the target, i.e., the person or the object? Please detail your thoughts and your feelings. So, what step did you take once you identified who it was that you were going to kill? Think about this. Either he'd been in that house before or he'd never been in that house before. So that would have slowed him down going up those steps, going up those stairs. If he didn't know whose bedroom was who, he might have got him confused and went into the wrong bedroom first. But it sounds like he knew exactly what he was doing. His thoughts were, this is so-and-so's room, this is so-and-so's room. Here's the other two roommates' room. This is Dylan's room, this is Bethany's room, and this is an empty room. Because it almost sounds weird to think you walk in through the slider, you're going straight. Unless you've been in that house before and you understand the dynamics, you would keep going straight into the living room area because there's all those doors. How did you know that door in the kitchen, that little storage door, wasn't a bedroom? How did you know that wasn't, a storage room? How did you know this, that, and the other? Because usually if you've never been to a place, it almost sounds, not sound, but it's almost, let's talk about that a little bit. If you've never been in a house, and we've talked about it on other podcasts or whatever, but if you've never been in that house, what step did you take prior to locating the victim or the target? Did you get ready? Did you make sure that everything that you had on before you entered the house was sealed off? How did the dog not start barking like this one does? A crackling noise, and this dog goes off for seems like hours. How did that dog not start barking at all to let somebody know that there was somebody in that house? Please detail your thoughts and your feelings. What were you thinking? What did you feel? The next one says, why did you choose that victim or target over others? This question is very specific. The why question, like I've told you before, why never has an answer. Because no matter what people tell you, it's either good enough or not good enough for you. So you asking why, you may never get the truthful answer. He could have reworded it by asking what made you choose the victim or the target over others. What made him choose Maddie, Kaylee, Ethan, and Xana over Dylan and Bethany? What made him choose those four instead of those two? Like I've stated in another video, the opportunity, the mental impairment, the element of surprise, and I can't ever, the mental, or no. I can't ever think of the fourth one, but I will. If you watch my other videos, you know what it is. And they'll probably come to me here in a minute. So what made him choose that victim or target over others? Was it anger? Was it frustration? Was it the easiest target first? Because of all four of those, I would have think Maddie would have been the easiest to take out first. Not that she was less scrappy than any of the others, but the others just seemed to have a little more on them, weight-wise, muscle-wise. It looked like they would have had a little more knowledge in fight in them. No disrespect to Maddie, because I'm sure had she been awake, she would have put up a hell of a fight. What did you choose? What made you choose that victim or target over others? What made you choose those victims over others? Because you had every opportunity to choose other people, other houses, other locations, but you chose this one. What made you choose the victim or target over others? Now, if you look into these questions, you can fill in the blanks with what you know from the PCA. You can fill in the blanks from what you know from the information that's been spoke on, and make it make sense for yourself rather than having myself or someone else give you a direction that you can take your own self and make it make sense for you so that you don't have to sit there and wonder. You can just ask yourself, what made him choose that victim or target over others? Those were interesting questions. And they go deeper than the surface. They go deeper than what you might think they go. They're asking about thoughts and feelings. So have you ever dissected your thoughts and what makes you feel certain things? I want to share one more thing with you before I call it a night. I want to talk about the K-bar knife. Let's go ahead and hear the K-bar story.
I keep my breath still so steady. Keep my eyes fixed on the door. Keep a bullet in the chamber. Keep my feet firm on the floor. I keep the sky high above me. Keep the roads out of stretch and fall. It keeps my mind from going crazy. Keeps my heart going cold. Just in case it rains. Just in case it rains.
By the end of the 19th century, America has emerged from strife. Wars on American soil, from the War of 1812 and the Civil War, in addition to American excursions in Mexico and Cuba, firmly put the nation on a path of self-determination. In the wake of the Civil War, American industry flourishes. Reconstruction and a need for unity help fuel the tide of American self-reliance, the waves of which hit the cutlery industry.
The term cutlery in the late 1800s and early 1900s referred to anything that had an edge on it. So draw shaves, hand planes, scissors, razors. So today we think of knives, forks, and spoons. Well, this is so much more than that.
Previously dominated by German and English interests, a floodgate of American enterprises soon take rise. Cutlers set up shop along the East Coast, clinging to the New England shoreline after immigrating to the United States. In 1859, an oil boom in northwestern Pennsylvania attracts investors and fuels a migration of skilled craftsmen out of the Northeast and into the rural landscape of western New York and northwestern Pennsylvania.
This area, when you go out within a 20-mile radius here, is a mecca for the early cutlery industry in the United States.
This migration lays the groundwork for some of the most recognizable names in the knife industry today. Most notable is the Case family. More than 30 cutlery operations connected to the Cases branch out over the span of a few decades. This dynasty begins with Job Case, whose daughter Emma is married to John W. Brown. Emma and John have 5 children: Wallace, Anna, Emerson, Ethel, and Everett. As grandsons of Job Case, Wallace and Emerson Brown are raised in Little Valley, or the Village of Knives, as it would come to be known. At age 19, Wallace Brown becomes a traveling salesman for the Robison Cutlery Company.
Wallace Brown originally started out as a salesman, as a wagon jobber. Wallace's mom was a Case, so he was familiar with cutlery and where cutlery is being sold, a lot of it in the South. So he traveled around the South in a horse-drawn carriage and took his wares and peddled them. That's where the roots of this company came from. In that, though, if that wouldn't have happened, he also wouldn't have understood sales channels and product and the quality as much as he did for his own ventures when he ended up doing it.
In 1894, Wallace starts his own mail-order cutlery business based out of his home in Little Valley. He calls this business the Union Razor Company. Wallace is soon joined by his brother, Emerson. The Brown brothers open a warehouse in Little Valley, where they rent space to the many cutlery companies in the area to store their products. In addition to storing various products for other companies, Wallace and Emerson form their own cutlery company, Brown Brothers Razor. They contract with local manufacturers to produce products that bear the Brown name. However, this enterprise is short-lived.
This company ended in terrible failure. Today, there is no official documents or any kind of official or legal mention of Brown Brothers Razor Company that we can find anywhere in the county archives and the company archives. So it was almost like they wanted to wipe that chapter out of history entirely.
In less than 3 years, Brown Brothers Razor shutters operations. Defeated, Wallace, Emerson, and father, John Brown, go to work for the Cattaraugus Cutlery Company, another offshoot of the Case family. In Tityute, Pennsylvania, a small knife shop also struggles to make ends meet.
At the end of the 1800s, the cutlery industry was dominated by German and English interests. It had a long track record for quality, and that was kind of the gold standard. So American-made cutlery was kind of looked at as that second tier. Now, with the passing of the Dingley Act, that all changed. Tariffs went up upwards of 50% on a lot of items, most notably cutlery. So as such, cutlery work sprang up all over western New York, northern Pennsylvania. Most of these companies, they came and they went. It was a very hard business to be successful in. There was so many companies doing the same kind of knives, the same kind of designs, that there just wasn't room for everybody.
In 1897, in an attempt to keep their cutlery businesses alive, 38 men agree to form a partnership known as the Tityute Cutlery Company Limited.
The Tityute Cutlery Company, legally anyways, was formed in 1897 by 38 men, most notably H.H. Cummins, who was a Civil War hero, fought in 16 battles during the Civil War. Now, there's strong evidence to suggest that this company was a much older, upwards of 20 years earlier this company may have started. We don't know if that original company...
Union Cutlery is just one of a number of cutlery companies that supplied troops with combat knives. The most famous, the 1219 C2, or USMC Fighting Utility Knife, is designed, refined, and submitted for approval to the U.S. government by USMC Captain Howard America, USMC Colonel John Davis, and Danforth Brown. Danforth decides to use the K-Bar trademark on products made for U.S. troops.
Most of the companies that were producing these products, it would have a name on it, their company name or it could be a town and say USMC. K-Bar was one of the only ones that had a trademark name on it that wasn't their company name.
This collaboration forms the foundation of K-Bar's relationship with the United States Armed Forces.
A lot of people, when they see a K-Bar, they say, boy, that's quite a fearsome weapon, a pretty amazing knife to use in possibly a hand-to-hand situation in combat. But for most soldiers, it's a utilitarian use. The basic uses of any knife in use in the wilderness and in the woodline. A lot of folks used them for preparing hooches, as we call them, or shelters in the woods. Use them for preparing food, whether it's dressing in field game in the woods or cutting down bamboo shoots. Very many more utilitarian uses actually for the K-Bar than actual combat uses.
Union Cutlery isn't the first to produce the 1219 C2, and they don't make the most of the combat knife. But according to troops in the field, they make the best version.
A lot of soldiers and Marines, when they came back from the Pacific, brought their K-Bars with them and refused to leave them behind. They brought their knives home, and I think its performance in the Pacific, at places like Tarawa and Peleliu and Iwo Jima and Okinawa, I think its performance there really sealed its reputation for rugged durability and for quality, for high quality knife. And a lot of Marines today swear by them. We talk to Marines, 80, 90-year-old guys that still have their K-Bars at home.
Despite the different manufacturers, American troops begin to refer to all fixed blade style knives as K-Bars.
The name has become iconic. The sound of the name, I believe, has made an impression on people. But also the style of knife is common in World War II in a number of manufacturers. But K-Bars knives were the ones especially manufactured here in Olean were much more durable. They were stronger. They were a better knife. I can actually tell you, when I was in Special Forces in the qualification course, you were allowed to take one knife with you for your journey into the wilderness for a week, and most of us picked the K-Bar.
In May 1952, Union Cutlery officially changes its name to K-Bar.
We changed the name to K-Bar because it became so popular after World War II. Union Cut was the company during World War II. So for a brand to become so popular that you change your brand name to it, that's pretty cool.
Due to the uncertainty on how long World War II will last, a surplus of Union Cutlery marked K-Bars are made. So many, in fact, that after 1945, another K-Bar USMC fighting utility knife will not be made until the 1970s. The surplus K-Bars do not sit idle for long. Wars in Korea and Vietnam eventually put the World War II knives back into the hands of American soldiers.
Soldiers in Korea wanted to know what the guys in World War II carried. It's a word of mouth. A lot of times you see Grandpa carried a K-Bar in the Pacific. I'm leaving for Afghanistan. What should I carry? And it becomes a family thing. It's a trust issue. And once again, it goes down to quality. People trust that K-Bar knife. The brand has been established. People know K-Bar, that's quality. They don't have to second guess. They don't have to wonder if it's going to break. They know it's a good knife because you know what? Grandpa carried one on Iwo Jima. So if it's good enough for Grandpa in the Pacific in World War II, it's good enough for me.
Although K-Bar experiences a surge in name recognition, once World War II ends, the demand for fighting knives fades.
For any wartime manufacturer, it's a very hard transition to get back to what they were doing before the war, particularly when they've made hundreds of thousands, if not millions of these products. So it was difficult to assimilate themselves back into the civilian marketplace. And the companies that couldn't do it went away. The companies that could flourish, and many of those are still around today.
After decades of stability, Danforth Brown and K-Bar face a changing marketplace and once again struggle to keep the company afloat. Just like his father, Danforth Brown is faced with difficult decisions that will impact K-Bar forever. Danforth Brown has seen the Union Cutlery Company through the Great Depression and World War II. He capitalizes on the popularity of the USMC fighting knife and the K-Bar name.
At the end of World War II, there was millions of knives in circulation around the globe that were known as K-Bars. Whether they were actually K-Bars or not, Trying to capitalize on that, Union Cutlery changed their name to K-Bar in 1952. Now, the problem was the market had changed. Instead of military knives, utility knives, it had kind of gone back to that pre-war need for hunting knives, pocket knives, and Union Cutlery was forced to adapt.
Just as his father, Wallace Brown, had been approached by Olean, New York officials to move his cutlery operation, Danforth is courted by representatives from Dawsonville, Georgia, in a bid to relocate his company.
Danforth found himself in a very similar position to Wallace before him. He had this very intriguing offer in front of him to move the company, only this time it wasn't 30 miles away. It was 1,000 miles away, far away from their home base, where they were from, where their family was from. So it had to have been quite a decision, and I'm sure he didn't take it lightly.
Tax incentives, inexpensive property, and the prospect of cheap labor give Danforth Brown optimism that this is the right move for the survival of K-Bar. In 1954, he moves K-Bar to Dawsonville, Georgia, under a 20-year agreement.
K-Bar relocates, Danforth Brown moves down to Georgia, and he quickly finds that this probably isn't going to work out. One of the reasons for this not working out was the workforce. Good, hardworking people, but unfortunately, the surrounding area was mainly farmland, and these were families that had for generations been farmers. Their crops were very important to them, so if they had to tend to their farm, they would leave and tend to their farm. At the time, it wasn't really set up for a factory manufacturing environment, and as such, they often found the plant shorthanded and were scrambling for workers to do necessary and vital operations.
A disinterested workforce and slumping sales put Danforth Brown and the officers of K-Bar in a precarious position. This is a pivotal moment for K-Bar. Danforth has taken a gamble, and it has failed. He can admit defeat, close the company, and simply walk away, or make another bold move.
Quickly overwhelmed, there was only one choice Danforth Brown had: to relocate back to Olean, New York. Fortunately, the factory was still in place, much of the equipment was still there, the workforce with all of their knowledge were here as well, so it was a pretty seamless transition back. Fortunately for him, that probably saved the company.
After being in Georgia for only 2 years, the Dawsonville operation is closed, and K-Bar limps back to Olean, New York.
K-Bar's return to Olean was quite a homecoming. That had to have been something that was very reassuring for Danforth and for really much of the staff here. That was a big part of the community that had been suddenly taken away, and for them to return home, that was a very positive thing for Western New York.
Despite his miscalculation on the move to Georgia, Danforth Brown has crafted the company into a globally known brand. On March 3, 1960, Danforth Brown dies, bringing an end to over 6 decades of Brown family leadership. It was Danforth's father, Wallace, and uncle, Emerson, who built the company from scrap. Danforth's grandfather, John, helped his sons grow a cutlery dynasty from the ashes of failed businesses and manufacturing ventures.
After Danforth Brown passes, the company changes hands several times, from local Olean businessmen to other knife companies to what we would consider today to be conglomerates. The death of Danforth Brown marked the end of the Brown cutlery dynasty and really marked the beginning of a turbulent time in the company history.
K-Bar sales begin to decline. Several Olean businessmen step up in an attempt to fill the leadership void. However, the decline continues. A series of owners also jump at the chance to own a piece of the World War II legend. But all suffer the same fate: failure. K-Bar enters into Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Dick Sturm, a longtime K-Bar employee, is appointed to run K-Bar on behalf of the bank.
One of the key employees during this time period was a man named Dick Sturm, who started at K-Bar in the 1940s and had subsequently rose to run the newly created K-Bar Collectors Club. And he was a great resource for history, from firsthand history, but also really tried to gather up documents and anything that could be of value down the road. So we're very much indebted to him today for what he did during his time at Ka-Bar.
Although Ka-Bar files for Chapter 11, the Robinson Knife Company purchases the Ka-Bar assets from the bank before the company can be reorganized. Despite bankruptcy, Ka-Bar operations continue without delay. The Robinson Knife Company prevents the total collapse of Ka-Bar, but a declining marketplace does not allow them to capitalize on their investment. After only 2 years, Robinson Knife Company sells Ka-Bar to the Cole National Corporation, an outdoor conglomerate of Cleveland, Ohio.
Once Ka-Bar ultimately left Olean, it went to Cole Consumer Products. It largely became a brand that sourced all of its products, and they sourced it from a variety of places: Pakistan, China, Ireland, and the products that were in the line were much of a shell of what it used to be.
Armed with an aggressive business plan, Cole National begins to diversify the Ka-Bar lineup. The company focuses on inexpensive pocket knives that look similar to Union cutlery patterns from the early 1900s. Products are sourced from the Far East and stamped with several variances of the Ka-Bar name. Slowly but steadily, sales begin to stabilize.
So during this time period, there were several different stamps used for Ka-Bar knives, many of which you will see still today. Today we use the all capital letters with the hyphen between the K and the bar. During this time period, they experimented with everything from all lowercase letters to losing the hyphen entirely, to marks that said things like Ka-Bar International, different lines like Saber, and this was just kind of a way to delineate the different features of these knives.
Cole National keeps the Ka-Bar brand alive for nearly 2 decades. Ka-Bar continues to operate at a modest clip. However, it lacks the dynamic growth an organization like Cole National demands. In the mid-1990s, Cole National puts Ka-Bar up for sale.
Ka-Bar did hit a rough patch again, and it was something where it ran a very real possibility of the company going away entirely, whether that was being bought and taken offshore or just eliminated completely. The future was very uncertain.
Olean, New York is also home
Their primary vendors at the time.
After 30 years, Ka-Bar ownership returns to Olean. In May 1996, Cutco Cutlery purchases Ka-Bar from Cole National Corporation, rescuing an American icon.
There's no way around it. LKS saved Ka-Bar knives. It brought Ka-Bar truly home, put the home office back in Olean, New York. Without their intervention, Ka-Bar probably would have went away.
In 1996, when they purchased Ka-Bar, I was 20 years old, and at the time working in the Cutco factory. They needed some employees to help out in the shipping department. I was one of the first employees hired by Ka-Bar and became their main picker, packer, shipper of all the raw materials and finished products that were getting sent out the door for the orders at the time.
Under the Cutco umbrella, initial Ka-Bar offerings are limited. The USMC Fighting Utility Knife is the centerpiece of Ka-Bar's rebirth.
I think there'll always be a need for a good knife and for combat soldiers. It's just that way it is. As we move more forward with technology, and they talk about push-button warfare and drones and all these kind of things, and the technology advances to a point where they're talking about autonomous tanks and aircraft, you're always going to need guys on the ground. There's always the need for the infantry, for soldiers that can take ground and hold ground. And when that comes down to it, it goes right back to the basics of hand weapons and tools like that. And of course, if it ever comes down to it, it could come down to hand in hand, and you're going to want a good blade on your side, and that's going to have to be a K-bar for most guys.
The attacks on American soil on September 11, 2001, plunged the United States into global conflict.
One of the real big turning points for the company was in 2003 when we got involved in multiple operations in Afghanistan and Iraq. The knife that came to the forefront again was the K-bar. It reintroduced this legend to a new generation of warriors because pound for pound, it's still the best value on the market when it comes to just an all-purpose utility. The design is timeless, and it still does exactly what it does today, what it did then, and does it well.
A surge in demand creates the conditions and capital to expand K-bar's product line. More knives are made in Olean, New York, creating jobs and fostering a sense of pride in American manufacturing.
The product line slowly was built back up under LCAS, and when it started, it was just the 1217 USMC fighting utility knife. That did expand due to demand to the U.S. Army and the U.S. Navy, for a brief period of time, the U.S. Coast Guard as well. One thing that never really changed throughout all of these transitions in the company history was the K-bar name, the K-bar reputation, the tradition that was behind it, the way that it is revered throughout families from veterans, and the overall American growth has been astronomical.
The K-bar family grows to include custom knife designers from around the country.
The advent of custom knife makers became in vogue probably the 80s when custom knife makers and manufacturers started collabing and getting together and producing products that were different than what just the company would do by itself. For us, there was none of that until 1996 when we bought the company. And we started with Bob Dozier, then moved on with John Benner at TDI, Ethan Becker, JC Charles, Mike Snowdy, Steve Johnson. All of these persons have a different element about them that they're trying to relate to the consumer and say, this is who I am, this is what I do. And for us, it was trying to find people that had stories that identified with their consumer base, like our stories identify with our consumer base.
In 2014, K-bar acquires another World War II knife icon in Eck Commando Knife. Subsequent collaborations under the Eck umbrella with Spartan Blades and Jesse Jarez expand the K-bar footprint. Today, K-bar continues to evolve. The fighting utility product line continues to form the backbone of the K-bar brand. New products, such as the K-bar Spork, combined with the K-bar Master Series, have diversified K-bar offerings.
We've spent quite a bit of time over the last 5, 6, 7 years really creating an environment of change and willingness to change internally with our employees. Our employees know who we are, they know what the brand stands for, they know what we do, but it's to not get so tied down in the muck that you're scared to change and be fluid, because we've seen that so many times with this company over the timeline of it that's when it fails, when you get so scared that you just do the status quo. And we've got wonderful employees here, Cutco, everybody who's involved in everything with K-bar, they get it, they get what this thing is, and they like to be a part of this thing that can evolve and change and move and be something else. I don't know where it will be in 5 years, I don't know where it will be in 10 years, but it's a whole lot of fun being part of it and watching it change, watching your young employees come in, have an idea on something, it's like, okay, let's try it.
April 2018 represents 120 years in the K-bar story. The K-bar story is about more than just knives. It represents family, duty, tradition, ingenuity, resilience, and pride.
When I think of a K-bar knife, I think of kind of like a historic value. You know, it's been around for a long time. It's something that's been proven. It's got the history. You know, whatever design may be out, whatever new features or whatever it may be, it might be the newest thing, but it's still got that history and proven capability.
I'm a history buff, so you know, I think of the history behind that and how many young kids relied on their K-bar, and you know, to them a K-bar was more than just a knife, and I think that's why every knife out there in that pattern is a K-bar, you know, and that definitely says something for the brand.
If you were to go downtown in the Strip right now with a whiteboard and take random individuals, 50 of them as they walk by, give them 6 seconds to draw a knife on a whiteboard, and you were to superimpose those over the top of each other, you'd probably have something that looked like a K-bar knife. I mean, K-bar's been around so long, and it's such an iconic brand. For those that don't live in the knife industry, those that don't collect or don't use them, their first thought of a knife is either one of two things: a kitchen knife or a K-bar.
And K-bar's one of the few cutlery companies that's lasted the test of time. They're making the same product, and they continue to improve upon that product every year, and it's just a legendary company. It's one of those companies that's an icon in America.
It's a knife of American myth, and it's been in every war we've been in since the early parts of World War II, Korea, Vietnam, every little outlying event, military event, there have been K-bars there. And the good ones are actually made by K-bar.
Despite the many setbacks, K-bar has always picked itself up from the canvas and continued the fight, a fitting tribute to the example set by Wallace, Emerson, and John Brown.
The story of K-bar isn't always a pretty one. It's not always one that has a clear line from point A to point B, but it's one that we're very proud of, and it's one that we hope that we're continuing to write, that we're pushing it forward, that 120 years from now, we'll be having a similar conversation, just the faces have changed.
So to sit here today and to work on a project like this is so important on multiple levels. Because as we dig through this history and we flip over rocks and find nuggets and try to piece things back together, we're doing our due diligence to pass the stories forward the best we know and to help out the longevity of this company and the story of this company and the lore and everything that comes along with it, to make sure that the stories get told and the stories remain.
Okay, quite a video, quite informative. It was very informative on the company. And it's sad that a company that has been around so long has such ties to such brutal attacks from people who misuse their product. It's not the knife's fault. It's an individual who planned to hurt and possibly do more to somebody and uses it for evil that gives that knife a bad name. You know, one thing I noticed about that knife, the early brand did not have serrated edges. And if you don't know what a serrated edge is, that's the little parts with the little indentions. Those knives were strictly one side with the knife. There was no serrated edge. There was none of that. So, food for thought. I wonder if the knife that was used was serrated. Was it a knockoff K-bar knife? You know, because anybody can sell it. But the USMC on the leather sheath, it might not even be leather. But I've gone way too long. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Y'all have a wonderful evening. I'll see you tomorrow. Yes.